Were there any questions on the last part? Or was everything clear? Okay, so today, so basically now we'll kind of move on a little bit to slightly more advanced problems, but also those that appear a lot in practice, right? So this will be quick. I'll just give you a very um, high level idea of the advances in this field, right? For kind of these problems. So I'll talk about a few instances of this. Right, so we start with difference of submodular functions. So essentially, given f and g as submodular, the problem is we want to minimize x subset of v of h of x, which is equal to f of x minus g of x. Right? So now it turns out that this actually comes up in several applications, right? So I'll just write down a few example applications. It turns out that we saw the mutual information function, right? So given a submodular function, f, we saw the mutual information function if of a comma b was f of a plus f of b minus f of a union b, right? So it turns out that this SMI function actually is in general a difference of submodular functions, right? For many of the functions that appear in practice though, this is actually submodular, right? And in fact, we saw this property about the third order partial derivatives being greater than or equal to 0, right? So that implies the submodularity of this. But in general, so given a subset B, right, if of x comma b is a difference of submodular functions, right? Because you can kind of write this down as f of x. If b is fixed or given, then f of b is a constant, right? So f of x minus f of x union a. So f of x is submodular and f of x union a is submodular, right? So naturally, you now have a difference of submodular functions that comes up, right? There are many other applications actually. So it turns out that when you're learning submodular functions, you have like basically you have what is known as a so typically in like max margin learning, you have like a step which is called which basically kind of has an inference. Basically, you kind of need to solve a loss augmented inference step in your learning procedure, right? And that very often for many kinds of losses actually turns out to be a difference of submodular function, right? Another application actually is doing the mutual information itself, right? So just like the submodular mutual information, you now look at the mutual information x of a with respect to your class or with respect to y, right? Y is your class variable, right? This itself is a difference of submodular function, and this is useful for feature selection. So essentially the point being that for many kinds of functions, you have this difference of submodular optimization, right? So it's an important problem to consider for solving real world problems. So now the question is that how do we solve this, right? So unfortunately, the first result is a hardness result. So the hardness result says that trying to minimize this function, right, and maximize the difference with or without constraints, right? Even if these functions are, even if the difference is greater than or equal to 0, right? So even if h of x, which is the difference, is greater than or equal to 0, right? Still, problems 1 and 2 are actually NP hard to approximate. Right, so it turns out that it's much harder to approximate this in practice. I mean, in theory, right? So it's NP hard to approximate. You cannot get any constant factor or even any polynomial approximation factors, right? So these problems are very hard. So not just that, actually, what you can show is, in fact, any submodular, any set function can be equivalent to a difference of submodular functions. Right? So what this means is that given any set function v of x, there exists submodular functions f and g such that v of x is equal to fx minus gx, right? So essentially what this means is that the difference of submodule optimization has the same kind of hardness as any general set function optimization, which is going to be very hard, right? But there is still one kind of difference here, is that though there exists any submodular functions, it's not always the case that you can compute this f and g easily, right? So many times actually computing this f and g may itself require an optimization problem, which is hard, and so on, right? So I won't get into a lot of details there, but these are some results that are known, right? But there are certain conditions, right? There are certain conditions. So under certain conditions, it is actually possible to get bounded factors. And that depends on the curvature of f and the curvature of g. Right, so I won't go into these because this is a little bit more involved. I just wanted to give you like the high level flavor of what's going on. But having said that, I still talk a little bit about the algorithm, right? So these are all heuristics, but there is actually a natural kind of class of algorithms that can be applied to solve this. Okay, and this algorithm is actually a majorization minimization algorithm. Okay, so the idea is, given functions f and g, right, we do majorization minimization as follows. So we start with some set x0, right? Is majorization the same as maximization? No. So majorization means that you compute upper bounds, right? So it's called majorize, means you majorize the function, means you compute the upper bound of the function and you minimize the upper bound. So the kind of contrasting thing is called minorization maximization, right? So actually I'll call this majorization minimization and minorization maximization, right? So minorization maximization means you compute lower bounds and you maximize those lower bounds. Okay, so that's what this framework of algorithms is. So you start with some set x0, okay, and then you compute is variation inference. Yeah, exactly. So it's something like variation inference. Variation inference does it slightly differently, but the basic intuition of this is same. So for example, EM, right? EM is something like this. So it's like it's like kind of an instance of this majorization minimization framework. Yeah. All right. So you start with this. So you start with some x0, right? And then you compute these subgradients and kind of super gradients, right? So you compute basically, I'll just call this G, sorry, Maybe I'll use the notation slightly differently. So just give me 1 minute. So let's say we start with x equal to x0, right? Some initial set, and then we compute um, these modular lower bounds mf. Um, so imagine that the problem is, and the problem is that you want to minimize. Right now, we'll consider minimization, right? Which you minimize f of x minus g of x, right? So it's a minimization of a difference of submodular functions, right? So you compute a, upper bound of, so I'll use this notation. So you compute m of f, which is an upper bound, right? And you compute a lower bound of g. So this is a lower bound. So how do you compute upper bounds and lower bounds? You can use basically the intuition of the subgradients and supergradients, right? So I'm not going to go over them again, but again, just at a high level, you may imagine that you can compute these functions, right? These are all computable in polynomial time, right? And then what you do is that you actually solve now this difference. Um, so this is subject to x, right? So all of these are like tight at x. So now you basically solve like three variations. Okay. So the first variation is where you minimize f of x minus mg of x. So maybe I'll use like xt over here, right? Because this is at iteration t. Okay. So tight at xt, I use this modular lower bound and I minimize this, right? So this algorithm is called submodular supermodular. And this was actually done in 2005 by Narasimhan and Bilms. But then we actually came up with two additional variations of this, where you can now minimize, uh, basically you take like the upper bounds of this minus g of x, and we call this um, supermodular submodular, right? And finally, you can take actually, basically you kind of have a modular versions of both. So you take like mf of xt of x minus mg of xt of x, right? And anyway, so there are like three variations of this. Both of these use like these upper bounds and lower bounds, right? And using this, you can come up with, now the interesting thing is that we are kind of converting this difference of submodel optimization, which is very hard, into a, in the case a, it's a submodular minimization, right? Because this function is modular. A difference between a submodular function and a modular function is submodular. So this problem 3a is actually a submodular minimization. 3b actually is a supermodular minimization, but we can kind of recast it into a submodular max problem, right? And finally, this problem is actually a modular minimization, right? And by the way, we can contrast this also where the min problem is a max, right? So in each of these cases, we get max, and all of that, all of that can be again done. So in this case, we get like submodular max, we get like supermodular max, which is the same as submodular min, and we get like modular max. So we can do this in like all of these three cases, and we can try to analyze this actually in these cases. So I think that's another interesting kind of direction, slightly more theoretical. I think there are a few open questions in my mind. If any of you are interested in kind of thinking about these problems, let me know. I think there are some interesting open questions here. Yeah. For max, do we still use an upper bound of f? Yeah, so that's a great question actually. So when you're doing max, actually what you want to do is you want to use a lower bound of f and an upper bound of g. So it kind of flips a little bit, right? So here you use actually a lower bound of g and upper bound of f. So it becomes slightly different, but the intuitions are still the same, but you're right. Yeah. You would need to make sure that it is still in the majorization, minimization, or minorization, maximization approach. Any other questions? Okay. So now we'll switch gears a little bit. So I'll just write down over here, right? There are still some open questions on obtaining approximation factors. Over here, yeah. What will be the stopping criteria? Okay, thank you. So the stopping criteria here, there are actually a few more, a few different variations. We studied this in our UAI. So we have a UAI 2012 paper. So there are actually two UAI papers. One is 2005 and the second is 2012. So this one is Narasimhan and Bilms, and this one is Iyer and Bilms. Um, so basically, both of these. So the 2005 paper looks at only this version. In 2012, we actually look at all three, and we also study like the hardness, for example, over here. We also show this result, and so we actually look at a few stopping criteria there. You can look at the paper for more details, but at a high level, one idea of a stopping criteria is you want to make sure you have a significant gain every time. So by the way, one more property of this is because you're doing majorization, minimization, and minorization, maximization, you are guaranteed to improve the objective value at every round, particularly if the inner optimization problem can be solved exactly, right? So this is something that can be shown that you are guaranteed improvement always, right? So now the question is that when do you stop, right? So you stop when your improvement is not significant. So you can define an epsilon that you want at least epsilon improvement every time, and if you have lesser than epsilon improvement, then you stop. And based on that, you can actually also bound the algorithm, right, as to what is the minimum number of, I mean, what is the complexity of the algorithm and so on. So all of that can be bounded in this case, right? Any other questions? Okay, great. So now I'm going to talk about some related problems, but these are in fact much easier. Okay, so now the related problem is, instead of kind of having a difference, what if we apply one of the f's or the g's as a constraint, right? So there are two ways of doing this. One is you minimize f of x such that g of x is greater than or equal to some c, right? So this problem we call the submodular cost submodular cover problem, SCSC, right? And the second variant, which is like the dual problem of this, is where you maximize g of x such that f of x is less than or equal to a budget b, right? And this problem is called SCSK. So it's submodular cost submodular knapsack problem. Okay. So both of these problems are kind of related to this difference of submodular optimization, right? And the reason is because in this, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to minimize f while maximizing g, right? So you want to achieve both simultaneously. So what SCSC, the way SCSC achieves is that you minimize this, but you want to make sure that g is greater than something while minimizing this, right? So you have a lower bound constraint on g, right? So you're making sure that g is large while f is small, right? Similarly, here you're making sure that g is large, but here you are having a budget constraint on b, so you want f to be small, right? Or like no larger than something. So it turns out that SCSC and SCSK both appear in many natural problems where you have, like, say, for example, in this case, if g is some utility function and f is a cost, right? And you want to minimize, you want to have some cost function to be low, right? So there are several applications of this paradigm. So unfortunately, it turns out that both of these are also NP hard, right? But they are not necessarily inapproximable anymore. So you can still approximate them. Okay. And now one interesting theoretical result that you can show in this setting is that SCSC, right, is in some sense identical to SCSK. And what we mean by identical is that given an algorithm for SCSC, right, with a certain kind of performance guarantee, right? We can achieve an algorithm prime for SCSK by using this algorithm SCSE polynomial number of times, right? So essentially what it means is that if there is a certain approximation factor you can achieve for SCSE, you can also achieve the same factor for SCSK, right? So the both these problems are kind of similar from that perspective, right? So essentially, I'll just write this down that SCSC and SCSK have similar approximation factors, right? And now the second thing is that we can actually come up with a framework of algorithms right, using modular upper bounds and lower bounds. Right? And in turn, we are converting them into easier problems. But because of the way the problem is, we can actually get bounded approximation factors, right, in both cases. So I'll just give you a brief sense of the algorithms for this. Okay. So again, you have a majorization minimization type flavor, right? So imagine that you are trying to do the first version, which is minimize f of x subject to g of x less greater than or equal to c, right? You can kind of convert this now into a problem as follows, right? Where you minimize the modular upper bound of x, which is tight at some xt, right? And you can do this in an iterative manner. That's why it's majorization minimization, right? Subject to g of x greater than or equal to c. Can someone tell me what problem is this? We studied this today. G is a submodular function. Does anyone remember? Max submodular cover. You're close. Yeah. So it's actually submodular set cover, right? So it's not a max because we are minimizing this. This is a modular function now, right? So this is a modular function. So we are minimizing a modular function subject to a submodular cover constraint. So this problem actually is nothing but a submodular set cover problem. And if you recall, we showed that we can actually achieve a log, roughly a log of n approximation factor for this, right? So we can combine this actually to provide, so it turns out that, I mean, similar to what we saw in submodular min, right? The same approach we saw in constraint submodular minimization, that these modular upper bounds actually approximate the submodular function, right? So you have that, this one actually is, so f of x is less than this one, is a modular upper bound, and is less than some factor of xt times, or actually some factor of x, right? Maybe I'll just call it alpha for now for simplicity. So it's less than alpha times f of x, right? And using this alpha, we can actually combine this with this log of n and achieve an approximation algorithm. So I'm not going to a lot of detail just because, you know, I don't want to make things very complex, but the basic intuition is the same, right? And we are going to do this iteratively. So just like we do this iteratively over here, right? Where, so by the way, like one thing I didn't mention over here is that we pick the set X, right? And then we majorize and minimize, right? So again, given that set xt plus 1, then we will compute this upper and lower bounds on xt plus 1, right? So we'll do this over multiple iterations. The same we do over here. So here also we start with x0, then we get x1, right? Using x0, using x0 over here, we get x1 as a solution of this problem. And then we use x1 over here, and then we get x2, right? So we majorize and minimize. And through this procedure, we are guaranteed to, not really reduce the objective function. So we will have improvement. One caveat here is that this inner problem itself is approximate. So because of that, you can hypothetically, make some drop in objective value, but then, we make sure that the drop in objective value is not substantial, right? Or maybe you can stop when you make a drop in objective value. So there are different heuristics you can do here, but the basic intuition is that, in practice the approximation factor is close to 1, so you would still make improvement in practice, right? And but I think it's something to keep in mind when you implement this, that you want to make sure you make progress every time. Okay, but that's the final the final algorithm. And there are different variations for SCSC, SCSK. There's an entire paper on this. We have actually Iyer and Wilms 2013 paper at NIPS, NeurIPS/NIPS, right? So this is basically the paper where we studied this. It's called submodular cost, submodular cover, and submodular cost, submodular knapsack, something, right? But yeah, so I briefly want to just kind of point out to you that there are some of these other variations of algorithms also that we have, and also there are like kind of theoretical directions being studied that are studying this, right? So I think this would probably be a good point to stop and maybe see if you have any questions, because I think with this we would actually end now the portion covering submodular optimization. And the next time I would almost entirely focus on applications. So I'll talk about a few different applications. Like I'll talk about some data subset selection applications, some active learning applications. I'll talk about feature selection, some kind of rule induction applications, and so on and so forth, right? So we'll focus on application next time, and I'll kind of give you some flavor of how this is used actually in machine learning. But at this point, I thought we can discuss a little bit and see if you have any questions. Yeah, Nathan.
So I have two questions. One was the acronym SCSC. What did it stand for again?
Submodular cost, submodular cover.
Cover, okay. Also,
yeah, so this is a cover problem, right? So okay. This is the cost we're doing a cost minimization. So it's submodular cost, right, and submodular cover.
Okay, and there was a question where you asked about where we saw the submodular set cover. Particularly, what slide was it again that that was where the submodular set cover was a specific instantiation of something else? Which one was that again?
Yeah, so the submodular set cover is this one, right? So yeah, so it's this one. So maybe I should write it down that this is the so I mean it's called monotone submodular cover, or you can call it the submodular set cover. So it's minimized. So here there's a size of A, right? But we can actually extend this to be like minimize any like cost function of A. I forgot to mention this last time, so thank you. But this is like minimization of a cost function of A subject to f of A greater than or equal to Q, right? So this is the submodular set cover problem.
Okay. So if instead of the cardinality of A, we have the specific cost function C of A, is the same algorithm used in that case, or is a different one used?
Yes, the algorithm is the same. Okay. Just that, okay, a slight difference. So you need to divide. You need to divide here by C of S, right? So you need to make it into a cost-sensitive cover.
Okay. Okay.
So the cost-sensitive greedy basically. So actually maybe maybe I'll make this more clear. So what you really do is that this step, right, becomes max of S in V minus A of F of S given A, right, divided by C of S.
Does
So
the condition on the while loop change at all?
no, the condition on the while loop is still the same, right? Because it's a constraint on this. So the condition, the constraint on the while loop remains the same.
And the cardinality being less than n also remains the same.
Oh, this is like all this is saying is that, I mean, this is kind of superfluous, right? It's just saying that like n is a ground set size.
Oh, so you don't, yeah, you basically go until you don't have any more elements to add. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Yeah. Anything else? In general, about submodularity, about applications. Let me try to just save this one. How do I save this? Okay, maybe I'll figure that out later. Oh, I think it's here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So if there are no other questions, I think we can end early today. So again, thank you. I think next time, as I said, we'll cover applications and then that will be the end. What I will do in a couple of days is do two things. One is we will have the assignment 2 out. As I said, the assignment 2 is optional. So, I mean, if I would still encourage you to do it, but it won't affect your grade in any way. The second thing is make sure that you know are ready for the presentation. So we're going to start the presentations starting on 23rd, right? So I'll divide you guys into 3 groups based on the Excel sheet. So I'll use the same Excel sheet and put together the 3 groups now. So you will know. I'm going to do it randomly. So I know that those who go first have a little bit of a disadvantage. That's why I said it's okay if you have like not completely covered work, right? Whatever you have, make sure that you I mean like you can talk about that. Whatever progress you make till then you can talk about that. So that's fine. Okay. And I mean I wouldn't stress out too much. It's the main objective is for you to learn. So don't stress out too much, but make sure that you spend good amount of time and learn from this, right? Yeah. Okay. So sounds good, guys. We can actually do the office hour now. So I know that some of you had questions. So let's discuss. I'll just stop recording.